They wouldn't let me bring it, and I tried to get them to mail it to me. And I kept the diary for 3.5 years. Oh, I'd give anything if I had it now, because I had the name of every little town and in Africa and Italy, everywhere we stopped and stayed. Anyway, I remember a place that we met our group. See, my job was to go ahead and put in requisitions for different things for the ground crew. Like, of course, we met on what they call Mud Hill. I believe that was Taparui. Where's that? Taparui?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think. See, I wish I had all that stuff. Anyway, it was the awfulest rain you've ever seen, and I had to get some pup tents and raincoats and boots and all that. So we had pup tents, and it rained for about 3 or 4 days. It seemed like, and used to, you didn't hear of rain in Africa or in that part of the country. So anyway, we used those raincoats. Of course, they were, we could put them on the ground and get under a pup tent. That's where we slept for a long time. We kept moving up. Our next move, I believe, I don't know, we made 2 or 3 moves. Anyway, I do remember the move that we made on it was on a train. They called it a cattle car. They hauled cattle in there. They didn't have any passenger trains then. And our whole group, now there's about, I guess about around 2,000 of us. We got in there, and they'd been hauling cattle in there, and of course all the manure was still in there.
It must have smelled terrible.
Every time they'd stop in a farm place, they had bales of hay stacked up. We'd grab us up bales of hay and spread that straw out over all that stuff. Of course, that changed the odor a little bit. I don't recall the year, but the Professor Anthony, Durham and Madeline Anthony moved to Delonga from Alabama, and he was on the college faculty over there. And of course, Madeline, she wanted to find out what was happening around Delonga. You could tell she was kind of like a historian or something. So she saw the old courthouse out in the middle of the square, and she went out there and she asked somebody. She said, "Well, it's got an attic there." She said, "I wonder if I can get a ladder to get up in there." And they got her a ladder. I think they never got her to come down because she found too many things up there to read. She found an old Atlanta paper. It was not the Journal or Constitution, but I've forgotten the name of it. But she found this article in there where Benjamin Parks, my grandfather, he was out deer hunting. He was not a gold miner. He was out deer hunting, and stumped his toe over a pile of gravel and rock, and he looked down and saw that it looked like the yellow of an egg. His byword was "Jiminy goodness." He says, "Jiminy goodness." He says, "I have struck gold." So he was not on his land. He was on a preacher Obar's land, and he went back to. He thought, well, he told some of who was with him. He said, "I've got to go get me a lease on this, and we'll work this. And this is pure gold here." Well, when he went and told him, he said, "Well, you've lost your mind. You didn't find no gold on my property." And he said, "Well, would you give me a lease?" He said, "For any time you want." He said, "Give me a 40-year lease." He did. He gave him a lease. So, but later on, Obar found out that it was real gold. So he and his wife, he took his wife with him, and they went to see Benjamin Parks and said, "We want the lease back." And he said, "You can't have it back." He said, This is my lease for 40 years. So I think they had a real fight. The way they told about it, I remember Doris Kennemer wrote a book and told about how his wife kicked Benjamin Parks and all to try to get it back. But anyway, that's what happened on that. But I think later on, he sold that property to John C. Calhoun. What was he, vice president or something?
Yes.
Yeah. And and I understand that he did give Obar a percentage of what he got out as part of it. And I never did have any idea what he got or any amount of anything. He had a little pair of gold scales. We have those scales somewhere now. This is just a small scale that it has, I remember it has two what they call pennyweight things to tell.
Oh.
But now they have some more modern ones now that figure the price when they put it on there.
What did people pay with when you went in the number wheel?
They paid with their chickens and eggs, and if they had some kind of a produce they wanted to sell, but mostly chickens and eggs. And occasionally you'd find a few people with a little bit of gold, and Papa would still buy that if they had it.
Well, you moved to Dahlonega in 1929, and was that so your father could become a sheriff's deputy, or what? Why did you move to Dahlonega?
Papa was a sheriff. He was a deputy sheriff. We moved in the county jail. We lived in the jail for 4 years. I remember when we used to go to high school, I told the kids up there, I said, well, you know, I spent 4 years in jail. They said, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. Papa just made me live there.
But that's not all your father did. He opened a store, right?
He opened the store in 1928. He had a couple two or three partners at the time, and the name of the store was the Dahlonega Cash Store. We sold all kinds of groceries, meats, and well, we had to carry everything back then. You know, back then, if you didn't have a cow, you didn't have any milk. So everybody in town had a cow, and we had to carry a line of cow feed and stuff like that, so people wouldn't have to go to Gainesville. And I do remember all about that. So I don't know. It was a.
Well, I remember you told me you were what, about 13 at the time?
At the time that he built that, started that store, I think I was either 15 or 16 years old.
And you were the delivery boy,
I was
right?
the delivery boy, and we didn't even have a vehicle then. We had a little one-horse wagon that we used to use, but in about 6 months they found a used pickup, and they got that, so that was my delivery truck until later on. After I got out of service, I got an Army Jeep. We used that.